You just call out my name. Sing it, Micers. And you know
wherever I am, I'll come running. Oh, yeah, to see you again.
McCluskey, winter, spring.
Winter, spring, summer, or fall. All you gotta do is call, and I'll be there. Yeah, 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 yeah.
You've got a friend.
Do.
Speaking of friends, I'm back with my friends, Christopher McCluskey, Jamie Slingerland, and we're missing one of our friends, Chris Niemeyer, mainly because he recently just got kidnapped. It's a really sad story.
Dadnapped.
Oh, dadnapped. Oh, okay, that's better. So that means his family kidnapped him for a special family day down in Florida. We miss you, Chris Niemeyer. Come back soon. We're coming off the rails as sevens together here. But it's good to be back. I am Michael McGreevy, and I'm here with my good friends, Jamie Slingerland and Christopher McCluskey. And we are just three guys who are crazy about our wives. We love our kids, and we're killing it in business. And today, we're going to talk about a tough topic for men. Friendship. What? Guys are supposed to have friends?
A lot of people experience highs in their life, and I am experiencing a friendship high. We had a mastermind weekend, and McGreevy, you were here sleeping in the Franklin perch, hanging out. Niemeyer was gone. We didn't see him. And we just had a great weekend, really connected deeply. Really unique when you have a group that size and people are speaking from the heart, talking about deep desires. And then we had little after parties over here at Casa Slingerland, and just the fellowship continued. So I'm coming off a really great weekend. Mark Ross is a part of that group. Just had a great time connecting with him. If I make an inventory of God's richest blessings, I have really great friends, and I'm thankful. I'm thankful for you guys.
I'll receive it. Oh, man. Well, when we're talking about these important domains that we always do here at EFM, marriage, fatherhood, and business, goodness gracious, this is not for the faint of heart, and it certainly was not meant to be done alone. I mean, are you kidding me? How difficult is it to navigate the ups and downs of a marriage relationship by yourself? I'm just thinking this past week, my son Asher has had an earache for the last week, and he basically is screaming 90% of the time. I almost lost my mind. If I didn't have some other guy friends to talk to that have been through something similar, my goodness, I would be completely out of my head. And then this business thing too, right? The ups and downs and the roller coaster of running a business. We need authentic male friendships in order to help us along in these areas of life. So that's what we're going to talk about today. How do we do this? How do men do this well? Because we've seen a lot of versions of it not being done well. What are your thoughts on that, Chris?
Yeah, not done well and or just not done very fully. I would say that's a lot of what we see is that guys, when they talk about friends, they talk about the people they hang out with, the dudes, the guys down at the sports bar, the guys that they'll get together with for a football party or and hey, not that there's anything in the world wrong with those, but we're not talking about just associations or knock around, cut up with the guys kind of gatherings. Nothing in the world wrong with a poker night. Nothing in the world wrong with getting together with guys for spectator sports. But when we're using the word friendships here, we're talking about things, as Michael and Jamie are both underscoring here, that grow us as men. They're not just fun or entertaining or filling of time or keeping us from feeling lonely. They are calling us out and calling us up as husbands and as fathers and as businessmen, and for that matter, as stewards of the Lord's temple in these bodies and these lives that we've been entrusted with on every plane of being. When you're in relationship with the kind of men that we're talking about friendship with here, it is, as Scripture speaks of, iron sharpening iron. The two of you are becoming better every time you get together in some ways, conscious and unconscious. Some of it's intentional, some of it's unintentional. It just kind of happens because you're so real. You are so transparent. You are willing to ask the questions that need to be asked. You are willing to explore the topics that you know you're struggling with, so you bring them up. That kind of friendship is what we're leaning into here.
Yeah, regardless of where men stand, and that's such a good point, McCluskey. It's so much more that we're longing for as men. Regardless of where you stand in regards to faith or even how you live your lives, this longing to be on adventures with other men. I mean, look at some of the most popular movies for men right now, and I would not endorse any of these, but one that comes to mind is The Hangover, which is just complete mayhem. The entire weekend is just about defiling yourself and being a part of just the craziest scenarios you could ever think of. For what? Like, there's an emptiness when you think about that, but still men are drawn to that because they know they want more. It just gets diverted in the wrong direction. Really, where this adventure is for a lot of us is in marriage, is parenting, is running a business. That's the real adventure that we're really called to be engaged in. And just as a starting point, we need to know where we stand here. So that brings us to our first point is take an inventory for yourself. Who are my key relationships when it comes to male friendships? Even maybe get a piece of paper out and just start to write down who are the key male relationships in my life right now, and where do they stand? Are these real friendships? When I make that list, it's a pretty short list for me personally, and it takes time to get to that place, but there's things that we can do as men to start to work on this area of our lives, because man, do we need it. Jamie, when you think about being intentional about developing relationships, what are some things that we can do as men?
Well, I was making a list. I was actually doing that homework there. So
I hope I made it.
You made the cut, both of you guys. Nimoy made it too. I think we need to posture ourselves in a position where we're willing to open ourselves up. Open ourselves up with maybe those guys that don't want to go on the hangover trip. And if we have that in our life, maybe we need to find a new group of guys that want to be known and not just pound beers and watch the football game. It takes a level of intentionality to foster the relationships that you already have that are a safe place to be real and vulnerable. And then if you don't have that, to identify what it would look like. I say this humbly, but that's something that I actually have had success with. I mean, we meet every week. And I mean, even with you guys, sometimes I feel like this voice inside me of like, oh, don't call those guys because they're really busy and you don't want to really upload a bunch of struggle on somebody. So it takes a level of discernment too, right? How much do you even unpack to like your really close friends sometimes, because we're all in a battle.
It's really good, Jamie. And yeah, what you're talking about principally is our internal dialogue with ourselves and the challenges that we face, but just the second guessing of self and the questioning of whether or not anybody else is going to really care or give us the time, or whether or not we're really willing to be that vulnerable. I think there's a really practical piece to this too, and that is that the kind of friendships we're talking about take time. And they take time not just in like blocks of time together, sharing life together, but they take time in terms of length of time. Like usually you don't go deep with somebody on your first meeting or your first 5 meetings. You gradually grow into a deepening friendship over time. And very practically speaking, we're a very transient culture. We don't stay put very long. So a lot of people that we might actually have been able to foster real relationship, real deep friendship with over time, they're moving or we're moving every couple of years. I mean, that's the Western way anymore, particularly for employees. When you are employed, you are so subject to being moved because you got advanced up the ladder and they want you over to a different branch, or you get outsourced, the company moves to a new location, the company closes down and you got to find a new job, your spouse needs to move. And so much of the way Western culture works is that we live where we do, not because that's part of the bigger vision for our life, and we got this big idea of sinking down deep roots, but instead it's just, oh, well, that's where the jobs are. We're like nomads career-wise, and we just go where the jobs are. So if people are moving all the time, very, very challenging then to develop the kind of friendships that we're talking about. Enter the first part of our name, right? Entrepreneurial family men. Entrepreneurship, not entrepreneurism.
Yes.
Entrepreneurship. I got it, Niemeyer.
Old dogs can learn new tricks.
Entrepreneurship allows us to choose, to be much more at choice as to where we're going to live and where we're going to sink down those deep roots, and thereby provides us a much greater likelihood of being able to invest in serious long-term relationships that are more than just association.
Yeah, that's good, Chris. I mean, a lot of friendships, the more connected we are on social media, the more that people think they have a lot of connection with people, when really it doesn't reach those deep levels of connection that can only be achieved in person, face to face, sitting across from each other. So that's the call here, is to really look right around you. Who are you spending time with regularly that you are sharing your life with? And that just doesn't happen by accident. We don't just fall into spending time with people. It requires some intentionality. It requires picking up the phone and calling somebody and inviting them to maybe an event that you want to go with them, or out for coffee just to connect. So that's a piece of this too. And Jamie, you're so good at this. You've done this very, very well, as being intentional about connecting with people who you really know that are going to make you better, and really working on that relationship. So I'm learning from you in that area, buddy, for sure. Okay, so now that we've taken an inventory of who are the real people in our lives, who are the friends that we have right now, and maybe we're identifying that we want something deeper, and we're starting to talk about what you can do to develop these friendships and deepen them. I think one piece that's really helped me feel connected to other men is when they are open. It gives me permission to then be vulnerable and open with them as well. And over time, as it's appropriate, you can start to share real parts of your lives, things that you truly struggle with and want to get better at. And oftentimes when you start sharing things like that, you have ways that you can complement each other and build each other up. So that's what we're talking about here. Another way that you can start to grow in friendships here is just to ask for help. And that means praying about it, asking God, can you put some people in my life that would be good for me, that I could develop and nurture a friendship with? You might be surprised what doors open when you start intentionally praying about this and thinking about this often. What other ideas do you guys have about how to grow authentic friendships?
First of all, with McCluskey talking just about how it takes time, it's kind of, there's an art to it, right? And a mindset that if you need this, it's all right if you spend some time with people and have some people over, and that you don't go really, really deep. The first couple of times that you meet, you got to create a level of safety, because if you just start going too deep, it's just, there's no real base for that. One of my really good friends on this list, it actually was more of a slower burn. And then all of a sudden we just started really going deep with each other. If this person is worth having a deep relationship with, then it's all right if it takes longer to meet that person.
You know, the old adage that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So oftentimes, if we're recognizing that we don't have something in our life, it probably means we need to look in the mirror and figure out what is it that I am doing or not doing that is not making that more likely to happen. So I think when we look at ourselves in the mirror as men and say, well, I don't really have the friendships yet that I want, we can ask questions like, well, am I desiring that? If I'm desiring it, Michael, like you were saying earlier, am I praying about it? If I'm desiring it and praying about it, am I actually willing to be that vulnerable, that real. Am I making time for it? Am I investing myself such that it could happen if it was the right person in the right kind of a situation? It's oftentimes the case that, no matter where you go, there you are. We get in our own way on a lot of this stuff, and we can make it seem harder than it is. The transparency, the vulnerability, the willingness to be known and to ask questions so that you come to deeply know somebody else pretty much begins and ends with ourselves in most cases. James chapter 5, verse 16 says, confess your sins one to another, that you may be healed. A lot of times that passage is just like looking at the issue of confession itself. I think if we take a broader perspective on sins, meaning like the things you struggle with, your outright sins of commission, the things that you do that are bad, or the sins of omission, things you just were too lazy on, left out, didn't do, and the things you're struggling with, your fears, your insecurities, your shortcomings and failings. Confess those things to each other, that you may be forgiven. No, that's not what the passage says. Forgiveness comes from the Father. Confess them to each other that you may be healed. Healing is something, growth is something that comes through relationship. We are not supposed to just grow on our own. We're not supposed to just heal in these areas of shortcoming and failing and sin on our own. God speaking to Adam when he created him in the garden said, it is not good that man should be alone. So he made us a helpmate. That's our spouse. That's our wife. But he also said, it's just not good for man to be alone. We gotta be in relationship.
That's good.
So good, McCluskey. To be known fully and to know fully. Not to do this thing alone.
We always joke around about the Barnwood signs and McGreevy's, but this week McCluskey won the Barnwood sign with his name emblazoned on that. And it says, you can't grow on your own. Christopher McCluskey right there. We're not letting McGreevy steal that one this week.
I usually steal mine later. I let the giants create their quotes, and then I swoop in 10 years later. So what about you? You are not meant to live this EFM life alone. It's time to take an inventory. Do you have authentic male friendships in your life? If you do, how can you deepen them? How can you go even further with those relationships? If you don't, what can you do today to start working on these relationships? How can you be intentional to create these connections and to begin to nurture them? You need other men in your life to help pull you up and for you to pull them up as well. So what about you?